Welcome to this Quick Take Rapid Learning module. Today's topic, Overcoming Call Reluctance. These days, there are lots of new ways to reach out to prospects. But to establish a connection, qualify a customer, and win share of mind, nothing replaces an actual person-to-person phone call. And yet, salespeople are still reluctant to make that call. According to one survey, 80% of new salespeople fail because of call reluctance. But this isn't just a problem for new reps. In a recent survey of nearly 200,000 salespeople, 90% said they experience some degree of call reluctance. Other studies have found it to be the number one reason for underperformance in sales. In this quick take, you will learn the psychological basis of call reluctance, why traditional approaches to dealing with it often backfire, and steps you can take to overcome it. Call reluctance is so common because it's related to a fundamental human drive, the need for acceptance. In situations where we might be judged negatively by others, for example, giving a speech or applying for a job, we feel anxious, and we feel especially anxious when approaching strangers, as in cold calling, because we have so little information and can't predict their reaction. Of course, nearly everyone experiences this kind of social anxiety. It only becomes dysfunctional when it leads to what psychologists call self-focused attention. When a potential encounter is seen as a threat to our social standing, we can become hyper-focused on what we say and do. At the same time, the anxiety causes physical symptoms, a racing heartbeat, shallow breathing, sweaty palms, that focus us even more on ourselves. This self-focused attention amplifies the initial anxiety and crowds out rational thought. It leads to avoidant behaviors, procrastinating, over-preparing, not making the call at all, bailing at the first sign of trouble, or not asking for the order. Making matters worse, self-focus creates a negative feedback loop. Buyers sense the anxiety and perceive the salesperson to be unknowledgeable, unprofessional, self-involved, and incapable, which leads to a failed call, which leads to more anxiety in the future. When you understand how this feedback loop works, you can see why traditional approaches to call reluctance often fail. Threats and promised rewards simply amp up the anxiety. Relaxation and meditative techniques keep us focused on our own physical reactions. And when we try to visualize a successful outcome, we're still thinking about how we will feel. So how do we break this vicious cycle and stop focusing on ourselves? One of the best ways, research shows, is by shifting our focus to the task itself. Instead of framing the sales call around how well you're performing, you approach the sales call as a task to be completed. That may sound like a tall order, but you don't have to revamp your entire approach to sales calls. It's more a matter of focus. Create a checklist that breaks the call down into a series of small, discrete tasks or steps. As you work through the call, you simply focus on completing the very next step. So, for example, when you pick up the phone, you focus on dialing the number. Once you've dialed the number, you focus on what you'll say when the prospect answers, or what you'll do if you reach voicemail or a gatekeeper. Research suggests that when you train yourself to work through the call like this, one small step at a time, you can reduce anxiety and improve your performance. One study looked specifically at salespeople and found that a task-focused orientation correlated with more successful sales calls. Another study found that a task-focused orientation helps salespeople bounce back after losing a major sale. So why does task focus reduce anxiety and call reluctance? Because the brain only has so much bandwidth. When we concentrate on the task itself, there's less room for dysfunctional thoughts. Instead of anxiety crowding out our ability to perform the task itself crowds out the anxiety. The most critical time to stay focused is during the first few steps of the call, picking up the phone, dialing the number, and starting the conversation. That's when you know the least about your prospects and are most worried about their reaction. So that's when you need to crowd out dysfunctional thinking. Once the conversation gets rolling and you're engaged, the anxiety usually dissipates. Here are some ways to make a task-focused approach more successful based on the research. Don't think ahead. When it's time to dial the phone, don't think about your opening statement. Just focus on dialing. When the prospect answers, don't think about how you'll counter objections. Just deliver your opening statement. Approach objections as problems, not judgments. For example, if the prospect says, "We have someone who does that already," it's not a judgment of you or what you sell. Define it as a problem to be solved. If the problem is, "How do I keep this conversation going?" the solution might be to ask, "Do you think it might be worthwhile to find out what other options are available to you in case your needs change?" And if the call is unsuccessful, interpret it as a problem you couldn't solve, not as personal rejection. Don't ruminate over what you did wrong. Simply move on to the next task. Of course, a task-focused approach doesn't mean you'll reach your goal for every call. But if you're experiencing call reluctance, it can help you make more calls and better ones. Your anxiety will diminish. You'll procrastinate less. Your calls will begin with more confidence and will more likely result in a productive, meaningful conversation. Thanks for watching. Now return to the program page and take the quiz. Also, please take 15 seconds to click on the survey link and fill out an evaluation of this program.